In more than one area, I disagree with the committee, but hey, at least the ACC got a good rankings day.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth on the number one sports podcast network out there. Who's more on upset alert this week, Notre Dame or Michigan? I will explore both of those games this week as they are both road double-digit favorites. How about that? They have that in common. South Florida is going to win again. I have thoughts on the Bulls and Utah as well. Don't sleep on the upset potential for the Utes this week. But let's start with the committee's rankings. BYU fell too far. This was the first thing that I noticed. Okay, fine. I'll admit it. It was the second thing I noticed because the number one thing I wanted to look for was what they were going to do with the group of five teams, where the resumes have been hotly debated in my mentions over the last several days, which I am here for. Varying inputs. Not everybody agrees with me, including the committee. That's okay. But the second thing I wanted to see, what are they going to do with BYU? BYU was punished because this loss happened way too late in the schedule. That's what it comes down to. Because the rest of BYU's schedule and their win over Utah now sees them fall all the way down to number 12? So you're telling me that if the playoff ended today, that BYU wouldn't be in the play? But Spencer, it's straight seeding. But you've got the group of five team in there, and you're going to have the ACC champ in there. So how much room do you actually have? And BYU wouldn't be in? I hope that would change. BYU's got TCU this week. They better win that game. If they lose that one, they're going to be in serious trouble. And this is not me saying that this is right, BYU fans. This is the committee telling you very clearly that they do not care what you did in the past. They are going off that Texas Tech game. Alabama gets a mulligan because it happened early in the year, and they have won all those games against ranked teams, and so they have a cushion. But BYU doesn't get that cushion because they only beat Utah, and they only compete in the Big 12. And my initial rankings reaction was, well, you know what? The Big 12 got some serious respect. And then here we are just a week later, and BYU is dropping too far. In my top 25, which I'm throwing up for the YouTube audience here, you can see I dropped BYU down to 9 and moved Texas Tech up to number 6. Those two teams were at 8 and 9 a week ago. And so I'm sure you have plenty of things that you can disagree with my top 25, which are primarily driven by resume with a sprinkle of eye test and feel and such. Because nothing should ever be a 100% metric for determining a top 25. But what I think was very clear is that BYU at 11 and 1, are they guaranteed to get in? Are they? I think that's a legitimate question that BYU fans have to ask themselves. Not that whether they should, whether the committee is going to let them in. I would be more than a little upset if that winds up being the case. So BYU fell too far. I do not believe for losing to another top 10 team, they should have fallen out of the top 10. Alabama has a loss to unranked, one win in the ACC, the worst of the Power Four conferences, which had a good day. I'll get to that in a moment. But we forgave them for that because of the rest of their resume. Well, they don't like the eye test. I think that's what it comes down to with the committee. They are valuing eye test a lot because they have BYU low, they have Notre Dame high. Notre Dame, as I double-check the rankings here, number 9 inside the top 10. That's not based on resume. They have a good win over USC, who's a top 20 team. But that's based on eye test, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I do think Notre Dame's a good team. I just want the results to matter. I want the results on the field to matter above all else. there are some notable exceptions. And just because there's a head-to-head result, I don't think automatically should mean that a team be ranked ahead of another. Because if there is a result that is so glaringly bad on the committee's or on a team's resume, then I am okay if the committee puts them ahead. Like Miami being behind Notre Dame, I'm okay with. Because Notre Dame's losses are of high quality. And Miami's simply are not in comparison, especially after a Louisville loss over the weekend. But overall, did you notice where Miami wound up? Did you notice that Miami has turned into the biggest fans of Pittsburgh this week? Because not only could you knock out Notre Dame if Pitt finds a way to win, and I'll talk about that game later in the show, Miami, because of the losses to Virginia and Louisville, just shot up 3 spots. Well, suddenly Miami, if they can finish at 10-2 and add a ranked win, does that seem like a resume that could get in the playoff with a win over Notre Dame? Yes, suddenly it does. And last week I was on this very show saying it's one bid league. And that's the way it looked. And the chaos seemed to make it that way. But all of a sudden, Miami's right there. Whether you think they should be or not, they are not that far out. So there are going to be a lot of exciting games and conversations and borderline or essentially elimination games in the coming weeks. So a lot of this stuff will sort itself out, including, but not limited to, the good old Group of 5 debate. I love the Group of 5 debate. Fans are passionate about the opportunity to go into the playoff and maybe win one game. I'm here for it. I am 100% here for it, guys. As a general rule, do I think the G5 should have an automatic berth to the playoff? No. Should they be able to get a team in? Yes, absolutely. Because if you earn it, you should get there. But should you automatically get it? I don't think so. So the committee said that South Florida has been more consistent than Tulane this year. It's not the worst thinking that I have ever heard. The reason that in my top 25, which again I'll throw up on the screen for the YouTube audience, the reason I have Tulane in there and South Florida is just on the outside looking in is that when evaluating the Group of 5, which I do look at differently from the Power 4 resumes, when I'm looking at a Group of 5 resume, I am seeing what your upward potential is. Because that, to me, is showcasing how deserving of a team you are. That you can go toe-to-toe with the best teams on your schedule. And yes, Tulane has a bad loss. And the bad loss to UTSA is why South Florida is ranked and Tulane is not. I get that thinking. I think it is close. I just don't happen to agree with it. I'm not in the camp that there is a Grand Canyon-sized chasm between these two resumes. I do not believe that. But Tulane has multiple Power 4 wins, and they beat Memphis, who's one of the best teams in the American. That's where I come down, is I reward those wins for the Group of 5 more than I punish a loss. That's what it comes down to for me. And the committee doesn't see it that way. Okay. Well, for South Florida, they have everything in their own control because they play Navy this week. And if they win that game, I'm going to talk about it later, then they will justify this particular ranking. But if they lose, they're probably out of the playoff discussion. And then I would think it's Tulane. I would think Tulane is the next team in the Group of 5 that could enter the top 25 in the eyes of the committee. And the reason that I thought the committee would put Tulane in that spot coming in to this week is that they said last week when they didn't have a Group of 5 team ranked that Memphis was the Group of 5 team they had the highest rank, which is understandable. They had an SEC win over Arkansas. Okay. I mean, Arkansas is not great, but they're kind of respectable. And it's an SEC opponent. They had a bad loss to UAB tossed in there. It's almost like that's a common theme in college football. You can find flaws with every single resume across the top 25. So when they said last week, yeah, Memphis was our highest ranked team, Tulane beats them at Memphis, South Florida lost to Memphis, to me, there's an impact that goes both ways. I understand South Florida beat UTSA. UTSA beat Tulane on their worst day. But on Tulane's best day, I believe they have the best resume of the Group of 5, and I think they're the best team. But I'm primarily resume driven. They have more Power 4 wins. That's what it comes down to me. So that is my thinking. Not everybody agrees. That's okay. I'm not freaking out about it a ton for the group of 5 squads because unlike with BYU, I think the group of 5 will sort itself out. South Florida and Navy, one of those teams will be out of the conference championship running this week. There is some chaos that can ensue because you've got one loss, Navy, South Florida, Tulane, North Texas, and East Carolina. And if there is no head-to-head, the next tiebreaker, according to the American, and there are certainly others in the event that they're not ranked, is who's the highest ranked team in the playoff committee's rankings. Would they go beyond the top 25? Maybe we'll have to wait and find out. Maybe we don't. I've talked about tiebreakers several times on this show in years past, and then things sort themselves out, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But you have got 5 one-loss teams in conference play. 5 of them. And they do not all play each other, but South Florida and Navy play this week. I'll talk about that game later on the show. So, good day for the ACC. Not a great day for BYU. I disagree on the group of 5, but I'm not as worried about that as I am for BYU in the Big 12. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff at @LockedOn_CFB. Plenty of you already know that handle. Plenty of you already found it. That's okay. That's the idea, is to engage, discuss, debate, and you get mad at me, and that's okay. Because I can take it like the Dark Knight. Okay. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But are there any legitimate concerns of an upset for Michigan or Notre Dame? I will explore that next. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. You talk about a game changer like the type we're going to see on the field all weekend long, as we have all year long for your favorite football teams. Next day delivery is a game changer. Supply House gives you just that. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Let me ask you all a very simple question, to which I think I know what most of your answers are going to be. Do you know the name Mason Heinschel? No? Okay, that's all right. That's what we're here to do. Mason Heinschel will be the reason that Pitt beats Notre Dame if the Panthers are able to pull the upset here. Because the formula for beating Notre Dame this season in their 2 losses, which the committee's kind of forgotten about, and it seems like there's a deliberate effort to get Notre Dame in the playoff because they were really good last year, and we know Marcus Freeman's a good coach, but they're just forgiving them because there were close losses. And you know what? I get it. I get it. I don't love it, but I get it. The common theme in those 2 games is that there was high-level quarterback play on the other side. Not insane numbers from Carson Beck for Miami. I think weather was a factor that day, but he went 20 of 30, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And when Notre Dame lost at home to Texas A&M, Marcel Reed went for about 360 through the air and was just dynamic. Well, Pitt has been completely revolutionized making a midseason quarterback change because Mason Heinschel, they had a veteran coming back in Eli Holstein who'd had a pretty good career that I think reasonably might have had some Pitt fans thinking, hey, at least we're good at quarterback. Is our team going to be all right? Well, here's Pitt making their push for the college football playoff. And Pat Narduzzi, I believe he actually said that this isn't necessarily a must-win game because they've got to win their ACC games, which is technically true. But you want to make a statement and you want to help out some other teams, you win this game at home. Pitt is an underdog at home against Notre Dame in this spot of 11.5 points. And if they win, Mason Heinschel will be the reason. And then in the offseason, there will be a discussion on this show and several others like it about how much Mason Heinschel could command in the transfer portal. Because since taking over for Eli Holstein, whose play was subpar, lost the game to West Virginia. I mean, not him personally, just saying he was starting and that happened. When he took over, I was thinking, well, Pitt's kind of throwing in the towel on the year. I get it. Not going anywhere. Play the young guy, develop for the future. Kind of like what's happened in Colorado with Juju Lewis. They're throwing in the towel on the year. Season's not going to go anywhere. Play the young guy, get him experience. That's what I thought Pitt was doing. Well, Pat Narduzzi and his staff probably knew a few more things than me, which is surprising, I know, because obviously I am omniscient. I tried to get fancy with a word there. It didn't go very well. So the play that he has had, Mason Heinschel, in the last several games, since he started. You know how many yards he's thrown for? Let me just break it down. He's 5-0 as a starter, by the way. Pitt has won 5 straight games after a 2-2 start. That's how they're in the college football playoff top 25. Not mine. They're just on the outside looking in, like South Florida. He went for 323 and 4 touchdowns against Boston College, 321 and 2 scores against Florida State. Had a couple interceptions as well. Just 140 and an interception against Syracuse. That's his worst game so far. Everybody gets a dud. And then he got right back up on the bike against NC State and Stanford. 423 yards through the air, 304 yards through the air in those last 2 games. 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. So just safe to say that the young kid can play football a little bit. And so Pitt has been rolling for the last several games, and now they get a serious test. And I have seen teams roll through a somewhat inferior schedule, because that's not a gauntlet. They knocked Florida State out of the top 25, but I, unlike most people, didn't buy into Florida State just because they beat Alabama. I was in wait-and-see mode, and I was right to wait because we saw that they weren't any good. But the Panthers, in their last several games, have put up 48, 34, 30, 53, and 35 points since Heinschel took over. This guy's been playing really good football. Well, here's the Notre Dame defense that in his 2 losses has had high-level quarterback play on the other side. So if you tell me right now that Mason Heinschel struggles, then the game is probably over. It is probably not particularly pretty. It could be a blowout for Notre Dame in a number of different ways, because Notre Dame, we know, is a really good team that's been playing very well. And last year, after their loss to Northern Illinois earlier in the season, they rattled off, 12, 13, 14 straight wins, something of that particular nature. Here's the other good news for Pitt. They are allowing just 81 yards per game on the ground this season. 81. What does Notre Dame want to do more than anything? Do they have balance? Yes, they throw the ball better than they did last year with C.J. Carr compared to Riley Leonard, but they want to feed Jeremiah Love. I'm saving my pick on this game for my Friday show because this is one I need to let marinate. This is not an instant reaction. This is just, hey, here's what to know about this game. Here it is at a glance. I'll think further, make my pick on Friday show. I don't feel that way about Michigan. So Michigan is also a double-digit road favorite this week when they travel to Northwestern, which is basically Walmart, Michigan, dime store, Michigan of sorts. They are going to try and run the ball and be very physical, and they do some things well. Play good defense and just throw the ball a little bit, enough, and try to protect it. I do not trust Northwestern up front to go toe-to-toe with Michigan. I think Preston Stone is going to have at least 1 turnover in this game, maybe more. He's had a tendency to do that this season. And Michigan on the road, I don't think they're beating Northwestern by 30. It's not the way this Michigan team is currently built and constructed. But the Wolverines, I don't think, are on as big of upset alert as you have with Notre Dame going to Pitt. That's my read on it. I trust Michigan more in this spot, which is weird because I'm such a Michigan hater. Isn't that right, Michigan fans? I am the biggest Michigan hater out there, or I'm just right about Michigan a whole heck of a lot. I don't know if I'm going to put them in my best bets and say they'll cover the 12.5 points at Northwestern. I think there's a very real possibility that Michigan, even on the road, and look, playing in that stadium can be strange. It can be weird. It can be one of those games that just kind of feels odd, and then at the end you look up and go, wait a minute, it's close, it's competitive, we have to sweat, we need a game-winning field goal? The environment could be made for that. I don't know if Northwestern is made for that because I don't think that they're going to get more than 13 points, and I think Michigan can manage at least 20. So I'm probably going to leave this out of the best bets going either way. I'll take Michigan to beat Northwestern 24-13. I think the Wolverines will be just fine. I think Notre Dame has much bigger problems on their hand because they are going all the way across the country, well, from the center of the country to Pittsburgh, of course, but that crowd should be on fire because they've won 5 in a row and reinserted themselves into the ACC championship and therefore playoff race because their losses earlier this year are to Louisville. Yeah, that's an ACC opponent. And who? Oh, yes, West Virginia. So that's a one-loss ACC team that can still make the conference championship game. So I do wonder what that does to the urgency of the Panthers in this spot, knowing, we could lose this one, still control our own fate more or less to get to the college football playoff. They have Georgia Tech and Miami the last 2 weeks of the year. There could be a lot more chaos in store in the ACC, and they might just beat up on each other and wind up being a one-bid league after all. But as I talked about earlier, Miami going up 3 spots, that's a good thing because they're not going to the ACC championship game. They've got 2 league losses, but they could just sit there at 10-2 and just find their way, like Tennessee last year. Maybe. Man, I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm just saying that possibility popped into my head. As I always say, help is often given to those in college football that hold their own. If Miami holds their own, goes 10-2, you want Pitt. First of all, you want Notre Dame out of the picture, and you want Pitt to go on a run here. And for them to be as ranked as high as possible when you play them the last week of the regular season, and that could be a really big playoff implicated, maybe even just a play-in game to the college football playoff, which is something I would very much like to see. So let's go elsewhere and talk about potential upset alerts. What about South Florida? They're ranked. It would be an upset. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Not especially when your team's making that late push. Plus, my best bets are scorching hot. I have climbed out of the hole, and I'm over 500. I am so nervous to make picks this week because I just have done so much to get. I'm tempted to just call it and say we're over 50%. I'm not doing that. Not taking the coward's way out. The best bets will continue. If you think they're going back to what it was at the beginning of the season, maybe you want to fade the picks at FanDuel. If you want to ride the picks, then guess what? That option's available to you as well. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. It would be an upset. It would be surprising to some, not those that actually follow the American and know how well Navy has played this year, but it would surprise me if South Florida loses this game. And I don't fall into the camp of people that haven't followed the American this year because I have watched more than my fair share, hence my strong opinions. Even if you think they're wrong, you can't deny I have reason to support them. You just don't happen to agree with the reasons, and that's all right. Reasonable people can disagree. So for South Florida going on the road, Navy has lost 2 straight. They lost to Notre Dame, and then a couple weeks ago they lost to North Texas. So the Midshipmen have not been good defensively, just flat out. The last 2 games, they have been outscored 31-17 and 49-10. A little bit of quick math tells you that in their 2 losses, they have been outscored 80-27. Now, you would think that a service academy, happy belated Veterans Day, by the way, a service academy that runs the ball primarily is going to have success when the months get colder. Now, Blake Horvath didn't play last week against Notre Dame. Not sure about his availability going into this one, but if he does not play against South Florida, that won't help because Navy's offense needs to help out its defense. That's what's really missing here. The Navy defense hasn't been good this season. Even in games that they have won, they gave up 31 points to Air Force, 31 points to Temple, 32 to FAU, 31 in North Texas, 49 to Notre Dame. The last time they held a team under 30 points was all the way back in Game 4 when they beat Rice 21 to 13. That's the sort of game score I think we're used to with teams that run the triple option, as Navy, of course, does. But that just hasn't been what this Navy team is about. And this South Florida offense, make no mistake about it, Alex Golesh has got those guys scoring points. Another underrated name in the Florida coaching discussion. Alex Golesh is right there. He's got the Bulls running into the top 25. Just outside of mine, but not far. That gap between them and Tulane, very small in my view. And if it's small in the other direction, then I don't think we even all disagree on very much. But South Florida going on the road also as a double-digit favorite. I think they have even less upset potential here than Michigan, who, as I said, has less upset potential than Notre Dame. These are all double-digit road favorites. At least one of them is going to get pushed. I won't be shocked if at least one of them loses. Heck, I wouldn't be shocked if two of them lose. It's November in college football. What isn't possible at this point in time? But Navy's defense has not been the typical brand of toughness and physicality that I think we've become accustomed to. Whether it's Navy, Army, Air Force over the years, Army, of course, the reigning American champs, they just haven't been able to stop teams, and South Florida is not a team where you're going to get right. This is not an opportunity to finally figure things out. No, it's an opportunity, of course, to keep your hopes alive for the conference championship. I fully expect South Florida to go on the road. And let me double check that line. According to our friends at FanDuel, I believe it was 10.5. And 10.5 at Navy. I bet they cover that number. This isn't one I need to wait on. I don't need to sit on it. South Florida, 38, Navy, 20. I think they win this week. And in the eyes of the committee, further cement themselves as the college football playoff favorite from the group of 5 ranks. They'd be second in my book, but this is also a win that if they do go and dominate, I'd consider bumping them over Tulane because I think the margin is that close. But again, I come back to Tulane put 3 Power 4 teams on their schedule, and they beat 2 of them. I want to reward that, both the mentality of putting those teams on your schedule, and then, of course, beating them, and neither team is a train wreck. South Florida's Power 4 win is over a complete and utter wreck of a team in Florida. DJ Lagway got benched. They got blown out by Kentucky. Don't try and sell me on the fact that Kentucky is good just because they blew out Florida and almost beat Texas. That's a reflection of what those teams are not what Kentucky actually is. So that's the South Florida outlook there in the American. Continuing on with our potential upset alerts, did you know that Utah plays Baylor this week? Did you know that I'm highly considering Utah being one of my best bets of the week? Baylor is such a strange team and program right now. There's not another school in the country that has as much potential and talent and even success on the field this year as Baylor that feels as dead and lifeless as the Bears do. When these teams have gotten together over the last several seasons, Utah has gotten it done time and again. But Utah, of course, cannot lose. They want to create a chaos tiebreaker scenario in the Big 12 where they could go past a 10-2 BYU in the Big 12 championship game, which drives me insane, completely and utterly insane. But oh well, here we are. But here's the other thing. Utah, with their win over Cincinnati, who let me double check. Yes, Cincinnati has re-entered the top 25. Welcome back to the top 25 in that's in the AP. Excuse me. Let me just let me get this squared away here real quick. Had to make sure I was looking at the right rankings. I was looking at the AP for a moment. We want nothing to do with the AP poll. It's a complete and utter mess. Cincinnati has, however, re-entered the top 25 in the playoff rankings at number 25. Oh, look, I already had them in the top 25 and kept them there because they deserve to be there. at number 19. And so the Bearcats being there gives Utah a dominant ranked win over a top 25 team that is pushing to make the Big 12 championship game. Would 10-2 Utah get in the playoff? I don't know if I'd want them to, but would they be considered? Yeah, of course they would. They'd have the opportunity, kind of like a 9-3 SEC with a tough schedule, like in Oklahoma, for instance. They'd have the opportunity to throw their hat in the ring, to be in the mix. But they've got Baylor and the 2 Kansas schools as their remaining schedule. That's not very fun. That's not easy. That's not. I'm automatically putting Utah into the playoff in my head because, well, they've only got to play Baylor on the road, Kansas State at home, who's playing better football, and Kansas on the road. Nope. Kansas got a dangerous offense. Baylor can be scary. I mean, they feel weird, right? Kansas State, I know you're at home, but hey, Kansas State's been playing some good football. So I think that for Utah, they have a chance, but ultimately they might think back one day to that BYU game and go, oh my gosh, no, how did we lose it again? And they could be in the Big 12 championship game anyway. It's madness. It's madness. One more thing I'll throw out. I really hope, for the sake of, I'll just call it the betterment of college football and the overall health of the sport, I really hope that Oklahoma and Texas work themselves out, schedule-wise, to not make the college football playoff. I'm rooting for that to happen because I do not believe that those teams are truly playoff caliber or have had playoff caliber seasons if they lose another game or two. Certainly 8-4 shouldn't get you in. I don't want 9-3 to get in. I don't. I want results to matter. Call me old-fashioned. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.